My name is Sharon Norwood, and I am one of the artists in the Textures, the History and Art of Black Hair exhibition. Definitely, in my work, I think the curly, even though I'm not using the figure in my work, I feel like I'm definitely still using the figure as implied by the hair. And so using hair becomes a stand-in essentially for the black body. If you consider, most African Americans have curly hair, like, my hair. So for me, it felt like a really natural way to sort of utilize the mark to represent black bodies as opposed to drawing figures itself. And it's interesting because I came out of undergrad. In undergrad, I was using the black figure a lot in a lot of my work. And I think when I moved towards abstraction and reducing my language to a very more simpler scale, perhaps, it just made sense for me to it worked. It became an easier way for me to articulate myself by not using a specific person or a specific image in that way. So definitely I feel like I have found, like, in using the line as a marker for the black body, it allows me to perhaps have a longer, more layered conversation as opposed to if I was actually using an individual specific person. I think maybe the if I speak to my overall work as opposed to this specific work that's in the exhibition, like the work that's in the exhibition is definitely speaking about the feminine space, and in that space, especially the image being taken from 1840s feminine intimacy spaces where women would be like socializing amongst each other, amongst themselves, perhaps, in this sort of like very sort of privileged space. Definitely, a lot of my work is aimed at sort of like maybe disrupting that romantic notions of those spaces, perhaps, and maybe also in terms of intimacy. I think I feel like my work always is a conversation the viewer is having with themselves. I mean, surely it comes out in terms of us talking about the work now, but I imagine that whenever the viewer sees the work, there is a conversation they're having with themselves where they're asking why, and maybe trying to answer those questions based on their own personal experience. So in that way, I think the work intercept that space, that kind of like intimacy space. I consider it like most of these things are like hidden in plain sight is what I consider, right? So I consider that these things are hidden in plain sight, but then it's like, why is it that we no longer see it? Like when we look back at movies, we can say, oh my gosh, of course we can see like the strings. How come I didn't see the strings when they were like the aliens were before? But now we can see it because we've kind of learned how to see. And so I think sometimes in my work, I like to think that's what I'm trying to do too, is kind of like give folks a new way of seeing things. So disrupting the way that you normally would view an object in a way that is maybe a little shocking, that causes you to pause and to ponder and to unpack exactly what it is that the viewer is encountering. What have I learned in 2020 and what I would bring forward to 2021 is one of the things I've thought about here is in 2020, like this notion of fear have been like very present. And so, I've been thinking about, fear, whether it's, fearing the coronavirus or the political climate or, being outside or, even just my own practice or even just as uncertain. And I think one of the things I've really thought about is like, just learning to be present, is one of the things that I'm trying to do, because before the COVID, like I think we all had plans. We were gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and we were just so in control of things. And then things started happening, that unexpected things. So now we have to like rethink those and reevaluate it, you know. And also a lot of those things also shaped who we were and our own identities in terms of our own personal value of ourselves. I think eventually I started making one piece of work. I think my Black Lives Matter piece, I think, is more COVID related, because I think at the time I was feeling real anxious and just wanting to put up a sign. I wanted, like, I remember driving around and seeing somebody's sign, and I was like, oh wow, that makes me feel so good, and I feel so safe seeing that, and I wanted to have that. I wanted to provide that for somebody, and so I wanted to put up a sign, but you know, I was like, still am like really scared to do that, because I'm aware that, you know, I become visible in maybe not a very good way. And so then that whole thing about fear started creeping in. And then, so I created this Black Lives Matter piece with an embroidery piece. So I think it's being shown now. It's left the studio. And it's an embroidery piece where I use white lines, straight, not, and I could hear myself saying straight, not curly lines. And I was, you know, the image comes out, it was a negative image that's like surrounded by all these like white lines. And so for me, making that work was like a protest, with my own personal way of protest and my own sort of way of participating in like a very safe way. And I, you know, I mean, that was like a very, like, I feel like that piece was my COVID piece, but that was also a piece of realization, like a very sad piece, like knowing that I wanted to be brave, but I was like afraid to be brave, you know. And how did I feel about, you know, being afraid to be brave, and you know, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, definitely 2020 has been humbling, and it's some of the work's there, and some of the work, you know, that I've made it's there's definitely, yeah, that's what it is. And I think some of these other works might reveal themselves over time to be like very much of this space and of this time.